Talk to us about this letter. How many employees signed it, and how closely will Google management be reading this?
So as I just checked a few minutes ago, I think it's closer to over 140. What's rare in this, there have been public letters before. There was a letter earlier this year around Project Maven, Google's contract with the Pentagon. And there was a letter about Dragonfly, but this is the first time that employees have actually put their names out publicly. So I think that's going to draw a lot more attention. And I do think that Google management will pay closer attention to that because these employees are willing to go out on a limb.
Isaac, what do you make of the argument here from Google employees that they refuse to help the powerful censor the vulnerable? Is that a powerful argument?
I don't really know if that's exactly what's happening here. I wouldn't call the Chinese people who get to use Google in this case the vulnerable. I mean, I do certainly think they are helping the powerful. They're helping Beijing. They're helping the party here. That to me, I think, is striking. It was also strange to read the letter and see the employees try to say that this is not targeted against China, but any country that would do that, whereas China is the particular case they're dealing with right now and is by far and away the most important market where any issue like this could come up.
And Isaac, what do you make of the argument here that Google would be setting a bad precedent in China and then would have to bend to the will of other foreign governments?
So I think it's more that Google is setting a bad precedent in China for Alphabet, for other businesses, and for other American tech companies. I mean, no other market that has comparable levels of repression is anywhere near the size of China. And Russia is such a smaller market for Google and basically every other American tech company. And I think the real problem for Google to enter in this way would be the message that it sends to Facebook and to Microsoft and the way that it emboldens Beijing about, okay, look, US tech companies are going to yield.
Mark, I had the opportunity to interview Google chairman, Alphabet chairman John Hennessy recently on Bloomberg Studio 1.0, and I asked him about Project Dragonfly and the Chinese efforts, and he sounded a little ambivalent himself, Google's chairman, about this effort. Let's give a listen to what he said.
Anybody who does business in China compromises some of their core values, every single company, because the laws in China are quite a bit different than they are in our own country. The question that I think comes to my mind and that I struggle with is, are we better off giving Chinese citizens a decent search engine, a capable search engine, even if it is restricted and censored in some cases, than a search engine that's not very good? And does that improve the quality of their lives? And that's the struggle we have to work our way through.
Mark, what do you make of that argument that Google can do good even if it's there with a censored product?
Yeah, that's precisely the debate that's happening inside the company, and I think across the levels. You know, one of the employees that actually resigned over this project told me that he was talking to a colleague who said this metaphor: "Listen, a dirty window is better than no window," and so there's a strong belief, and I think the management, Sundar Pichai, the CEO, has certainly expressed this internally, that Google actually could do more good being there, and that, you know, like what Isaac was saying earlier, we have this sort of balkanization of the internet, right? Maybe 10 years ago when Google was in China, it looked very different than what it looked like now. And you have places like Indonesia where the country is asking Google to ban certain apps, and in Europe where they have the right to be forgotten. So Google sees that the world has changed. There is no sort of uniform, consistent Google and internet. And so they're like, you know, they look at other companies that are operating in China and they say, why can't we do the same?
Isaac, where does Google go from here? I mean, clearly they're waiting for some kind of license from the Chinese government to introduce Project Dragonfly, if they even still want to, you know, proceed from it being an experiment. You know, let's say they were going to grant, they were granted permission to operate in China. You know, considering the blowback and the PR punishment, do you think they even want to do that anymore?
I would guess that somewhere in Google headquarters there is a spreadsheet about projected revenues from entering China, not only for the search project, but for the host of other projects that Alphabet has, versus the PR damage, the employee morale, the people who publicly quit to protest this, and the costs of that. And I would guess almost certainly that the potential gains financially are much higher than the potential losses. So I think Google is probably going to say, unfortunately, that, well, we'll take a hit of our reputation, we'll deal with the Trump administration criticizing us for this, and if we can go in, we'll do it.
Mark, how are you reading these tea leaves? Do you think they're still going forward with it?
One thing they've talked about a lot is, and Sundar sent a letter to senators saying, we feel like we're going to be behind. Like China is marching ahead in technology, and part of this whole project is, even if we never launched it, is just a way to keep up with the direction that search and the like Chinese language internet is moving. I buy that a little bit. I do think Google looks at Tencent, they look at Alibaba, they look at the march of these companies in China and innovation there, and particularly like how they're using AI, and I think they want to be a part of that. And I think even if they don't launch a search engine, I do think they're looking at a cloud business, which may be less controversial in Congress and with their employees, and certainly other parts of Alphabet. I do think that right now we're less likely to see a search engine than we were certainly 6 months ago.